Let's begin with the fifth chapter from your History and Civics book of Grade 7, and the name of the chapter is Expansion of the Delhi Sultanate, the Khilji, and the Tughlaq dynasties. So let's begin. So, the very first part of your chapter is trying to explain us the end of Mamluk dynasty. The Mamluk dynasty came to an end in 1290. The Delhi Sultanate then passed into the hands of the Khilji dynasty. How this happened, we'll come to know gradually. The Khilji dynasty, Jalaluddin Khilji, the founder of the Khilji dynasty, captured the throne of Delhi from the last ruler of the Mamluk dynasty in 12,090. Okay, he was a very pious, means religious person, and he used to treat the revolts, or you can say all the people, very lawfully. Okay, taking this advantage of Jalaluddin's generosity, his ambitious nephew Alauddin Khilji, okay, he have murdered Jalaluddin. Now, after murdering of the, you can say assassination of Jalaluddin, um, now the leader became, or the king at that moment became, was Alauddin Khilji. So Alauddin Khilji won over the nobles by bribing. Okay, he started giving different kind of gifts to the nobles, rich gifts, and started buying them, you can say. Okay, as Jalaluddin was killed, so there was no other person to take over the throne. Okay, and whoever Jalaluddin's sons were there, all were killed or blinded by Alauddin, so that Alauddin would become the next Delhi Sultanate, and he successfully did it. Alauddin declared himself the Sultan and ascended the throne of Delhi. Okay, Alauddin Khilji was a brilliant administrator. He dreamt of conquering the whole world. Okay, he was the first Turkish Sultan to build an empire in India. So, areas which he had conquered in India, first is Gujarat. Okay, where you can say one of his general, that was Malik Kafur, was bought with only 1,000 dinars, and he was one of the general who had helped Alauddin Khilji to conquer Gujarat. Next area was Rajasthan. Alauddin first captured the fort of Ranthambore and then attacked Chittor, the capital of Mewar. The Rajputs fought bravely but lost the battle. The women performed Johar. Johar, what is Johar? Burned themselves to death. Okay, this also followed by the capture of the important cities of Mandu, Ujjain, Dhar, okay, and Chanderi in Malwar. So all these areas, you can say basically North India also was getting captured by Alauddin Khilji. Not only that, the Deccans also was getting captured by Alauddin Khilji. Next, Alauddin thus became the first Turkish ruler to extend his influence south of the Vindhyas. Vindhyas means the Vindhya range they are talking about. What kind of Deccan policy did Alauddin adopt? Alauddin did not annex, that means he did not try to capture and rule the Deccan after conquering it. Okay, he was far sighted. He realized that it is not easy for him to sit back in Delhi and control the Deccan area. So, what he did was, his main objective was to acquire wealth from there. Okay, and it was to, in order to maintain the huge army he was having and the administration and the territory. Okay, he was, in order to maintain it, he needed huge amount of money. So his objective was to get wealth from the Deccan part. So he did not come to rule. He just conquered it and left it and told that you all have to pay us a tribute, a huge amount of heavy amount of tribute or tax or money in order to recognize and understand that yes, Alauddin Khilji is very powerful. So this was going on in Deccan. This was a Deccan policy. He was not ruling there, but as because he was very powerful, a tribute was being paid by the Deccan area to Alauddin Khilji. Okay, next comes Mongol invasions. The Mongols attacked India 5 times during the early years of Alauddin's reign, but these attacks were successful. Okay, and after these attacks, Alauddin Khilji took several steps. First, he built up many forts through the route which was adapted by the Mongols to attack them. And then he made different kind of forts in these areas. The army was recognized and strengthened. Okay, Mongol leaders were captured and they were trampled to death by elephants. Okay, and many other also whoever the Mongol leaders were, they were also punished. What kind of measurements were taken against the nobles? Though these nobles were working for Alauddin Khilji, then also Alauddin Khilji was facing lots of we can say revolts and rebellions were rising. For that he took some kind of measures in order to control the nobles. The first thing was the nobles were not allowed to intermarry within his permission. Okay, so he can no noble could marry without the permission of Alauddin Khilji. No parties could be organized by the nobles without the prior consent of the Sultan. And elaborated and efficient spy system was set up. The nobles could not move about freely. Feudal land grants were confiscated. Fresh grants, that means the old land taxes which was granted, were all rejected by Alauddin Khilji, and a fresh new grant was made, and no longer the owners, landholders were no longer the owners of the land. Okay, next comes reorganization and of the army. What kind of reorganization he made? The size of standing army was larger. Okay, he had extended it, increased it. Next, he introduced the system of branding horses and maintaining a descriptive role of the soldiers. Spies were kept in every unit of the army. Nobles were not allowed to maintain armies. Okay, and the salaries of the soldiers were reduced and fixed. Revenue reform means as the area, the army, everything was increasing, so Alauddin Khilji was actually taking care of the money also, from where the money is going to come. This was also being taken care by him. So to meet the cost and maintenance of huge army, the Sultan needed a large amount of money. What he did to get this money? The land was measured and the share of the state was fixed. Okay, special revenue officers were appointed to collect the taxes. The Sultan increased the tax from 1/3 to half of the harvest. Okay, whatever crops they would be harvest, half would be taken away by the Sultan. Next was it was to be paid in cash. Okay, he started collecting the cash, not in kind. Market control policy. To compensate for the reduced salary of the soldiers and the heavy taxes imposed on the peasants, price control. As because this revenue reform was done, for that he had to introduce this price control in the market policy also. Alauddin set up 3 markets in Delhi. Okay, one for food grains, second was for expensive items, and the third was for horse, slave, cattle. All these were being sold. And to take care of these three market, each market has an officer, and the name of, and they used to call the officer as Sahana. Okay, the officer was being called as Sahana. The price of all commodities were fixed and prices of essential items were kept low. Market officers were appointed to keep a strict watch on the prices, the weights used for these activities of the traders. Anyone caught cheating the customer in price or weight would be severely punished. Okay, state warehouses were set up and stocked with food grains, and so which were released whenever there was a famine or shortage of food. Okay, next come art and learning. Alauddin Khilji was a patron of art and learning. Amir Khusrau, the famous Persian poet, lived in his court. Alauddin loved, or he was very much interested in architecture also. Okay, like the Alai Darbar, you can see the picture is given. The Alai Darwaza was built as the entrance door of the Qutub. So all this kind of many forts, many palaces, palace of thousand pillars was built by him. Okay, so Alauddin Khilji died in 1316. His death was followed by a period of political turmoil. And turmoil means it was not stable, lots of problem was there, as his successors were unable to rule the kingdom efficiently. In 1320, the last Khilji ruler was killed.